kinds of things that we've been doing in this last year with the EMP SIG. And all of you are here today because of the EMP SIG. We are happy that we can be part of the Dupont Summit, and we thank you all for coming. Last year, as Chuck mentioned, we had a similar event, and in fact, we've been doing this since 2011. In 2011, it was very small, and so it's great that it's grown every year, and that's been exciting. And since 2012, we have published the proceedings for each of those events, and we will do that again this year for this event. And what you received today is the proceedings from last year's event. So we hope that you will all take those copies and read them and absorb the information that is there. Last year, as we just mentioned, and a copy of this was given to the Honorable Frugate, was the fact that we held a tabletop exercise to look at three kinds of events. We looked at cyber, solar storms, and then EMP. And that was very beneficial, and there are books that you can purchase to see the things that we've done. This year, however, we decided that we would take a slightly different approach and say, okay, something bad can really happen, and what kind of plans are we going to make to see what we can do about this. So we started planning yesterday. We had the morning time was looking at various things that we could do, what kind of events, what would happen in those events, what were we left with, what kind of communications would we have, and something called Ponderosa, based on the Ponderosa tree that is resilient. And so we said, what kind of things will still survive, and what would we have if something really bad happens, either cyber or solar storm or with an EMP. So we looked at all of that, and we had a panel looked at what happens with water and food and medical and our supply chain and fuel. Five important things. And then we had the afternoon of planning with breakout sessions looking at the executive branch, the legislative branch, the National Guard, civil defense, what happens with volunteers in our community, and then power and financial. And the results of all of that will be compiled into a start of planning. And what we're hoping with the planning is that we will be able to take this to the next steps of having this go out to the regions, and that it's a start for the year, and that next year we can come back and see what are all the planning and where have we gone and what have we done. So in doing that, one of the important things is that any of you who would like to come and work with us on what are these plans and what are the next steps and what should we be doing, we would be very happy to have you come and help us. So please talk to me if you want to get involved. That would be great. The EMP SIG has done a couple of other really significant things, I think, during this last year. And one of them was that we've involved the International Council on System Engineering, or INCOSE, and you've heard that talked about this morning. And so you have a feel. I mean, I think that it's exciting that we're branching out and that we're working collaboratively with others. And so we're very grateful that we have done that. The other really major step that we have taken is that we've been working with regions across the country. And that is a start that you're going to hear about from our regions right now, about the kind of activities that we've been doing. So not only are we organizing things like here at the Dupont Summit, but now we have regional groups that are taking this the next step and doing it across the country. So let's turn now to Steve Pappas, who's going to tell us about what he's been doing there in the kind of Midwest.
Thank you, Mary. So the Midwest EMP SIG consists of Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, and I believe Missouri. It's configured in the same makeup of the regional configuration for all of the InfraGard chapters. One of the things that we've been doing in our planning process this year is put together a framework of how we're going to go and move forward with exercises and training in the EMP SIG, and Steve Volandt will cover a little bit more of that in a few minutes. I wanted to touch on why this is important to everybody and how you can take the products that we have for sale here today and implement these activities back in your home location. My background is in the water sector and emergency management. In Johnson County, Indiana, I was a deputy director for a number of years, and I was able to work at the grassroots level. In every county across the country, you have a county emergency management agency, and you have a county-level comprehensive emergency management plan with annexes called emergency support annexes. In my case, the water annex was ESF 3. The ESFs address transportation to energy, to law enforcement, and ultimately there's 15 of these that address every one of the critical infrastructures. So this involvement with the EMA, and my background going way back was in the military, plans, training, exercises. One of the opportunities I had as a deputy director was to take in a number of different courses at the Center of Domestic Preparedness on the National Incident Management System Doctrine and the Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program Guidelines. Now, all of our first responder agencies across the country adhere to that. NIMS Doctrine and Homeland Security Exercise Program Guidelines. In our role as a critical infrastructure and our interface at the county, state, and the federal level with the emergency support functions means that we've got to interact with state and federal agencies. We need to learn their language, and that language is NIMS Doctrine and HC guidelines. Now, yesterday in a panel discussion, we had a gentleman from the public health that left one with the impression that NIMS gets, really, you can get stuck in the weeds, and that's true. But you've got to tailor it specifically to your needs and requirements, and I think that's important. The manuals that the federal government has produced are voluminous. Tailor to your needs and requirements. Use the checklists that are in there. I think that's the most valuable tool in all of that documentation, are the tools for incident commander, for operations, planning, logistics. So the documentation that we've given you, utilize NIMS Doctrine, use the HC protocols, tie in with your county levels, and communicate, coordinate, train, and exercise with your partners at the county level and at the state level, and then share information with sister chapters and bring them along as well. The last thing I want to say is simplify. That's what I've heard throughout this week and up at the COSI conference in Cleveland. Simplify, simplify, simplify. NIMS can do that. There's one thing that they try to teach the responders in NIMS is smart objectives and creating smart objectives. Specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-sensitive. And if you boil that down so that those people in the front lines understand exactly what needs to happen, that's exactly what you'll be able to do, is make things happen. So let me pass that on to the next panelist.
Okay, Steve Volandt from North Carolina. Will you talk to us now about what's happening there?
Sure, thanks, Mary and Steve. Pappas. Hi, I'm Stephen Volandt. I'm in North Carolina. We've got 2 InfraGard chapters there, one in Raleigh and one in Charlotte. The Charlotte stood up about a year ago and raised their hand to lead the effort to create a Southeast Regional EMP Significant Interest Group, which I've gotten involved with. And Tori Crass, if you could stand up, just so everybody knows if you're here, they could recognize you and find you. I don't see them right now. I'll call them out later. What we decided to do was we needed to get organized. We had lots of smart people talking about this problem from many different directions. So the first thing that we put together was a charter. We've got some governance built into that charter that's working group based, and it's organized into interest areas and then further segregated into domains. The charter was written to be reusable by other regions and other entities that are interested in this problem space. So please contact one of us if you're interested in a copy, or Chuck Manto or Mary. We realized as we tried to get our heads around an initial exercise that we needed to do more than just work with the people that we had at hand in order to cover the entire Southeast. So we settled on focusing on North Carolina, and then we've learned that the state of North Carolina was getting organized for this themselves. So we've been able to leverage their work as well. I'll talk about that in a second. The other thing that we built for the Southeast, in addition to getting organized from a governance perspective, was we built a collaboration portal. And the Charlotte chapter led that, and Tori himself was in charge of that. And that is also designed to be reusable and a template for others. It's scalable. It could be scaled to handle all of the EMP efforts across the country, really. It's in a secure, redundant location, and it includes features like a document library and a collaboration wiki, if you've worked with those before. It allows volunteers to register. They can submit their contact info, their industry sector, their activities of interest that they'd like to sign up for, the domains that they're interested in, and we're also wanting to screen for people with prior military experience. If an EMP or a solar storm were to happen, we would have situations that would approximate a failed nation state, and a lot of our military veterans have experience fixing things and operating in failed nation state environments. And then lastly, it asks for who your InfraGard reference is. Tori, I just saw you walk in. Could you stand up? This is Tori Crass, and please reach out to him or myself if you want to learn more about what we're doing in the Southeast. Now I'm going to turn to the state of North Carolina and ask Taylor Smith to stand up. Now she's been really the person in the middle of facilitating a lot of the work, thanks Taylor, that happened with the state of North Carolina, so please ask her if you want some detailed answers or contact information. But what the state of North Carolina did is they put together a scenario that's not as severe as what we're used to. It's more of a limited EMP attack, which fades out over North Carolina, so parts of northern North Carolina have really the full blast effect, and then by the time you hit the South Carolina border, it's fairly minimal. And they put together an annex to the State Emergency Management Plan. They focused on 5 critical sectors that were prioritized, plus public health and safety. So the sectors they focused on were electricity, communications, transportation, water, wastewater, and fuel, being the core for any kind of planning and resiliency preparedness for the state. And their goals were to review the scenario with the participants and what would be the expected conditions after an EMP event. They also worked to identify existing response structures. So how can we leverage what's already designed to handle emergencies versus create something new, and establish measures that we could take if there was some advance warning, particularly with a solar storm. And in particular, review public information messaging. How do we get the word out and communicate to the public at large? And I sat in on several of those meetings, not all of them, and one thing that struck me was, like I mentioned earlier, lots of very smart people with lots of opinions and lots of differing understandings of the problem, which led us to rethink what we really needed in the Southeast region. And one effort to mitigate that lack of harmony in people's opinion was to come up with a maturity model. And the maturity model is based on starting from a level 0 maturity where either you're unaware or the participants are unaware or don't believe in the problem, would be level 0. And level 5 would be you've got whichever organization you're assessing is prepared to be safely resilient and sustainable for 400 days after the loss of all the infrastructure that we normally count on. And then, so 1 through 4 in between there show different levels of planning and then preparation activity to achieve that state of full maturity. And I'm happy to share that with anybody that reaches out. We've also been reaching out a little bit, taking baby steps to talk to legislators in the state and other folks at the executive level. So we're socializing with them, I guess you could call it that description, with the aim of drafting some legislation next year. And one of our goals in the Southeast is to promote components for resilient buildings and local communities. If you think about the problem that we have with all of our just-in-time food production and manufacturing, there's no buffer. If things stop for more than a few weeks, all those supply chains are halted, and to reconstitute any single one of those is an enormous task. And I grew up, and I think most of us grew up hearing stories from family about how they handled the Great Depression. Almost all of us had a family farm somewhere that some relative had, and nobody was worried about starving, for example. And those buffers don't exist anymore. When I go to the grocery store, I'm eating salad from California or from Florida. I'm not eating salad from North Carolina. So that's a very long-term goal, but I think it's worth discussing. And if we were inoculated with that kind of a buffer, a lot of us, this problem would be a lot less alarming. Ways to accomplish that we've explored are passive solar heated and cooled buildings with attached greenhouses and hydroponics that require no electricity, no power, just natural heat convection of the air circulating through them, combined with rain catchment systems. How many of those would you need? Not everybody needs those. What percentage of a community would need that kind of a fallback for this problem to be a lot less severe? The other thing we've got to do now that we've got our governance in place and this maturity model in place is we need to do some recruiting. So if you're from the Southeast, please reach out to us. We would like your participation. And we know that Tori has been talking to folks in South Carolina, so we're expanding into South Carolina, but the other states in the region, please reach out to Tori or myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now we'll hear from Mel Lewis, who is in the New York area and actually was our first of our regional group. So, Mel?
Yes, hi. I'm the chair of the InfraGard Northeast Region Committee for EMP SIG, and we started our activities at the regional level in May of 2014, and since that time we've been, after creating a charter for Chuck to approve and making us official, we've been doing things like sharing open source information with our committee members. We have about 40 committee members in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, plus another 25 that are spread out more geographically that want to participate and be involved. In addition to sharing, and that's how we started, sharing EMP-related information on the sources and vulnerabilities, we then started to doing things like holding awareness briefings for industry and the infrastructure people and law enforcement and government agencies. We would have actual half-day meetings at a central location, and there would be people coming in to become aware of things like that. We bring in people from, in addition to Chuck and others, we would bring in people from the EMP SIG community to help us with that. Then we had planning meetings And these are HSEEP compliant in order to facilitate the consistency from one group to another, and also to make sure we didn't forget anything, because it's difficult to prepare for a tabletop exercise, which we're planning to do in January of 2016. It'll be held in Westchester County, New York, which is just north of New York City. It's being held at the New York Power Authority facility. We've met there before. We like that facility. The people that are working for the New York Power Authority are very supportive and helpful. And so we're going to be doing that tabletop exercise. We're inviting people from law enforcement, emergency medical services, fire service, government organizations, the OEMs, of course, and non-government organizations such as the Red Cross and faith-based organizations, FEMA, DHS. These have already been coming. These people have already been coming to our meetings, but we're going to bring them back and encourage them to bring others to our tabletop exercise. We're also very focused on communications. The loss of communications, as has been mentioned, is serious, where we lose situational awareness when we don't have communications. So we're bringing in amateur radio people, ARRL, Amateur Radio Relay League. Several of us on our committee are ham radio operators. I got my license when I was 13. So we understand the utilization of that. Just to give you an idea how old I am, I was involved with RACES during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, so that was the real deal, all right? We thought that we were really going to be nuked. We really did. So we're bringing in the utility companies such as energy, water, sewage treatment, natural gas, healthcare, of course, hospitals, nursing homes, other communications entities such as the phone companies, wireless and wired landline. Our tabletop exercise is not going to be a doomsday scenario where it's, as mentioned earlier, there's no point in preparing, it's hopeless. There isn't much we can do. Rather, that it'll be serious but not devastating, so that we can address doable actions and come up with gap analyses that are useful, and we can assign action items, and the different agencies will assign themselves action items to close those gaps. In closing, I'd like to recommend, maybe all of you have done this already, I'd like to recommend that you read the book 1 Second After. I have nothing to do with the author or the publisher. And also Lights Out, which used to be an internet published book, but now it's available in paper. These are eye-opener documents that will help you to understand the possible consequences of loss of the grid for a year or more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Now I'd like to turn to Andrea Boland. She has been just a wonderful light in Maine, working there tirelessly. So Andrea, give us an update.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, folks, for your attention. I actually have a PowerPoint, which I've cut down shot quite a bit, try to accommodate the time. But there were a few things that I wanted to share with you. As a legislator in Maine, I brought the first piece of legislation on EMP and GMD protections that passed. So I got a lot of support for that from many international experts and national experts, and several people here in the room who came to testify. and help to get that passed, because of course it's not an issue that any one legislator can do by himself or herself. Just to try to jump along through this as quickly as I can, some of the main points that I want to make is that it's important to remember that states have regulatory authority. We're inclined to always look to the top, the federal level, and they've really had a hard time moving things forward for years. And so the states now have gotten more and more engaged. And of course, they're closer to the people and closer for you to reach. So I suggest that you pay attention to what may be going on in your own states. They've really been leading the way. The main problem that we have is a problem of politics and regulatory capture. And that's something that I'll talk about a little bit as I go along. The main points of the main legislation, which was LD 131, which passed in 2013, was I wanted them to just do something. I wasn't interested in too much in baby steps. I wanted long strides. And of course, as a legislator and a non-technical person, I can enjoy that kind of position and just push them. So I would just ask for them to just get protections on the grid, and gave them the benefit of the doubt that they'd know how to do that. And of course, they protested that it wasn't needed, there wasn't a problem, and then as the testimony of experts became stronger from meeting to meeting, they finally got to the point of admitting that there was an awful lot they didn't know, and I guess it was okay to do a study. So the study was really kind of a model piece of legislation that other states have also followed in one way or another. It just asked to look for the Public Utilities Commission to look at the most vulnerable components of the Maine system, the potential mitigation measures, their estimated costs, low, moderate, and high cost, a time frame for adoption, the policy implications, and give us a report back by next January. And everybody agreed that that was fine, a good thing to do. It was interesting, the chair of the committee polled all the stakeholders in the room and got them all to nod their assent. It was a long way from starting out saying I was just totally nuts about this whole thing. We ended up with two reports, one that was authored by Imprimis, who was an R&D firm that licenses some technology to block surges into the big transformers. The other was authored by Central Maine Power Company, even though, as you may remember, it was supposed to be done by the PUC. It eventually got shifted to the power companies. But, you know, without the good help of the experts, particularly the Foundation for Resilient Societies was very strong on helping us, Don Popick and Bill Harris. We got to something that at least gave us opportunities. So the following year, I was no longer in the legislature. I was termed out, and a new piece of legislation was brought to say, let's use some of these mitigation measures that we came up with. And that, the utilities really fought hard. There was a high level of lobbying going on, and they were saying it wasn't needed, and they appealed very much to the Republicans in the Senate. The Senate's the easiest place to work because there are fewer people there. And it really appealed to them hard that that would be unfriendly to business. And needless to say, our side was presenting that it was quite the opposite. But anyway, the result was that action piece of legislation resulting from the studies failed by a single vote in the Senate. So one of the issues that was brought up was cost. So I wanted to just show you this, and I don't know if you can read it from where you are, but my layman's way of trying to simplify what the two different studies gave as priorities. Central Maine Power Company authored one that essentially, as you look at it, their priorities amounted to costs of about $42 million. if we use the neutral ground blockers that, of course, Imprimus knew all about, and that generally is acknowledged around the country to be effective, the alternative would have been $8 to $12 million to accomplish very much the same things and more for less money. So the question is, why wouldn't you want the lower cost piece? And that's something that you need to look at. The utility companies get a guaranteed rate of return. In Maine, they get approximately a 12% rate of return. So it's actually more profitable to them to spend more money rather than less. There was also the fact that they would question whether they could get cost recovery. They could get the customers to be able to offset their expense. They had a great deal of support and feeling that FERC would approve that. So that didn't seem to be a real big problem. And then the actual manufacturer of the products then said, well, if you want to protect the whole Maine grid, their biggest transformers, the 345K transformers, they would, and they did it within a certain amount of time to make that commitment, they would half the price. So for about $4 million, as compared to 40 that has burgeoned to more like probably 70 million plus at this point, the choice was to go with the more expensive solutions and basically less protection, because the neutral ground blockers work like a surge protector on your laptop or your computer, and they've been tested by national labs, and they're actually a very good one, also working already, and they're reporting great results. But there's a real funny thing going on in the industry around the utility companies in NERC, just a resistance to this thing, and I still don't understand what it is. Here's another problem that we've got, because when you look at legislation, you've got to look more about what works and technically and what it costs. And I'd like to read it to you if you don't mind. In no event, Central Maine, which is Central Maine Power, in no event shall Central Maine be liable for any incidental, consequential, multiple, punitive, special, exemplary, or indirect damages, or loss of revenue or profits, attorney's fees or costs arising out of or connected in any way with the performance or non-performance of this, basically what's in the service agreement, even if such damages are foreseeable or the damaged party has advised Central Maine of the possibility of such damages, and regardless of whether any such damages are deemed to result from the failure or inadequacy of any exclusive or other remedy. We've got that in all the states. So what they can be assured of is that if there's a big problem, the customers and the taxpayers will foot the bill. CMP, I guess I mentioned to you, has the 11.74% guaranteed return on investment, too. My point here is that we need to link the guaranteed rate of return on investments to higher protective standards, and I think that's reasonable to ask. Actually, in Maine, we have a statute that says it will do that, but it hasn't been applied. There's such a problem with regulatory capture that we've got the PUC turning to the industry to ask its questions. The Public Utilities Commission was as surprised as the committee members when they heard the testimony of the experts. And when the CMP did the study to look at all these problems, it refused to even use its own recorded historical data on the events on the main grid, which has shown tripping and actually a fire resulting at our nuclear power plant following a major solar storm. So just to report at this point, the study group that was formed eventually that the power company was directing included some of our our national experts. Foremost, I must say again, the Foundation for Resilient Societies they're right in the next state, and it's great to be able to call and just haul them on up to Maine, and they do all their work and happily present it and generally leave the utility company speechless. But eventually, we have made progress, and that's what another message I want you to hear is the states have regulatory authority. The legislation is not easy, but it's valuable if only the opportunity for these big experts to come and testify and let the word out so that legislatures and others start to know more. And also because it starts to push the industry to do more, the utility companies. So what they're doing now is installing series capacitors at some high voltage transmission lines. They're adding reactive power capacity against voltage drops, which are a big risk in Maine. And they will continue to look at the neutral ground blockers, but they won't be taking it up until sometime after the middle of next year. But the most important thing that they're doing is they have a big and excellent development with the CMP is that they will install a pilot synchrophaser unit to monitor the grid for better management options and to know really, truly what's going on, which is terrific because they haven't had that before and they were resisting it when it was suggested in legislation. It will include monitoring of harmonics and DC flows, which is something that the neutral ground blocker would do on its own. And the really best thing about it is not only will they be collecting data, because the data has been collected, an independent outside firm is actually going to be doing analytics on the data. So we know what it means and how to respond to what it says. So they'll be capturing data at high frequency, hundreds of reports per second, and it will allow for a cumulative look at what is actually going on. So the initial findings were due the end of November. We'll be meeting, I'm a member of the task force, we'll be meeting December 14th, not long after we get back. And this will have an ongoing look at this whole issue and how we can respond to it. I was going to report on some other states, but I think I've used up my time pretty well. But in other legislatures, we're seeing actions trying to go forward, the resistance there, and some people coming back, but some people getting discouraged. So thank you very much for listening to this report.
Thank you, Andrea. And there is work in other states modeled on what you've been doing, so it's really helpful. So thank you. And thank you all, panel, and for the work that you're doing across the country.